Hi, everyone. This is John from That's Classic. Okay, man, this is fun. I get to do a shout out to Gail Reese, Brad Hamilton, and Ken from the Forms of Things Unknown. All three of these people have recently joined as members of my That's Classic channel. I really appreciate you. If you're wondering out there, how do I become a member as well? You just hit the join button in the corner of the video. It's $3.99 a month. You get a members only live chat with me. That's outside of the regular live chats that I do with all the subscribers. So this is going to be a little bit more in depth, answering your questions, talking a little bit more in depth about classic television, obviously my experiences. So just a heck of a lot of fun. In addition to that, I'll release my episodes to you early before I release it to the general public. And you'll get a shout out similar to what I just did. So just a great time all in all. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. So if you get a chance, hit that join button and become a member. Here we go with the interview. Well, it's another fantastic one, and that's classic. And the reason it is we have somebody on that honestly, it's the first person from this particular show that I've had on, so I'm quite excited about it. But we have none other than the gentleman that played. What was that?
Obviously, a good thing is there's not many of us left.
I know. It's a good thing. So basically, today I have the gentleman that played Wojo on Barney Miller, and his name is Max Gail. So Max, it's awesome to have you on.
It's good to be here. I'm looking forward to whatever we talk about.
Good. Well, I did a lot of research on you, and the one thing that I didn't find, which is always interesting, by the way, you're not the only one that have had this happen. I didn't see what your audition was for the show. I didn't hear. I looked at articles. I looked at interviews. I didn't see anything about that. What did you have an audition for Barney Miller?
Oh yeah. Okay, that's an interesting. I can share that with you.
Great.
I mean, there's actually a lot of. It would be kind of an interesting background on the show, maybe. But so for me, one thing about the audition was at that time, I had not been acting for a long time, but most of it had been in a stage play of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in San Francisco for 2 years, and then in New York for almost a year. And along the way, I picked up a few movie parts. My first one line in a Dirty Harry, but then I came back from New York, and I had started running long distances on the beach, and I started processing my growth up until that point in rhyme, which I'd usually been able to do. I grew up in a musical family, and song was a big part of how life was expressed and shared and enjoyed, but I started expressing a lot of my spiritual and other, things in rhyme, and then putting it to music of the different genres I had. And a certain amount of them were really just about creativity, just about, one of them was the song, Do Something Beautiful. That's what I want to do. It's not something you own. It does not own you. It was kind of just about the choice to be creative. And I thought, okay, that's what this acting was about. Mm-hmm. Getting me to this. So that's where I was, but I also started to get more of the jobs I was going up for, but I was not that interested in the acting because a lot of those jobs were like as the sort of second level bad guy on the TV cop shows of the day, which were pretty lame. They were Get Christy Love, and they were and my agents were kind of like, yeah, you'll get these parts until you get a pilot, you get a regular part of one of the good guys, but that's how they saw me, and that's kind of what was there. And I was going, no, this is not what doing the play Cuckoo's Nest and stuff. So I was on the way to move out, but I got a call from my agent say you got an audition if you want to do it. It's a cop show, but I don't know, it's a comedy, and I went like, okay, yes, I'll do it. So I went in and I met Danny Arnold, who, for those that don't know, Danny was the creative force, behind the show. I mean, he had done one pilot. He had a great record actually of doing shows that had great critical reception and stuff. But he had done one pilot of this show. This is what he explained to me right away, and it didn't get picked up. And he bought out his partner, and he told me this guy that was playing this part. It was called Kaczynski at the time, and he was talking about an actor named Charlie Haid.
Oh,
he
sure.
didn't say that, but Charlie went on to be in Hill Street Blues, right?
Oh, of course. Great actor. Great actor.
But yes, so Charlie had played this character that they called Kaczynski. When he said, I had him. He's not available. He's directing a play. And instantly, I saw Charlie a few years back on an audition. And he told me, Danny had told me, if you won't come back and do this, you'll never work in this town again.
Oh, geez. The worst line in the business. Before we go on with the interview, I just wanted to remind you to please subscribe to That's Classic if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so that you'll know when my next episode is being released. Okay, let's go on with the interview.
He said, I had this guy, and you're not really like him, but if you want to go ahead and read. And now on the other side, I learned later that he had seen me. I had a part of a bully on a show, the Paul Sand show, which was a limited show, but Steve Landesberg was in that show too. Paul Sand played he came out of Story Theater in Chicago, kind of a certain kind of theater, and Danny had seen me on it, and he'd called for me to come in. But this was kind of how he would work with people, But I said, no, I'll go ahead and read, so I did, and I chewed a lot of gum, and I mean, it was written originally. It was more like a Polish joke, the way Wojo was written, But anyway, at the end, he said, and as you imagine, this big shouldered, narrow hipped, in his 50s, which seemed kind of old to me at the time, big, gorgeous head of red hair, a leather jacket. He grew up as a single child of a single mother in Manhattan and joined the Marines at 18.
Wow.
He had incredible energy, Danny. He was a brilliant mind, and I remember that he said, well, you've shown me there's another way to do it. Well, first thing he said, after I read, he said, you're very good. And instead of going, well, like I usually would, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm kind of new at it.
Right.
I just said, thank you.
Yeah.
He said, you've shown me there's another way to do it. So ultimately, I did get offered to do the pilot. And for me, it was like, okay, I'll do the pilot. I'll get some money. I'll be able to go up to this place I knew about in Big Sur. That was the kind of the basement floor of a big house on the hillside. So it looked out underneath the main deck.
Wow.
Down through the oak trees to the ocean way down below.
Wow.
And this big basement space was a futon and an upright piano.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I'm just going to go there and keep writing my life unfolding. It was, I came to call my rhymes, I called them a lot. Songs, if I put them to music, I've been reluctant to call it poetry because some people are very precious about what is poetry. But these days I'm opening up to that, But whatever they are, they're my breadcrumbs in the cosmic forest. That's how I think about them. So that's kind of where I was centered, and I came in, we did, the pilot we did was 2 episodes. He had persuaded ABC, they wouldn't pay for film, but they, did video. He had a history with multi-camera film.
Interesting.
And one of them was a show called The Stakeout, one of the few times we went out on location. I mean, we went out of this.
Out of that one room.
So, anyway, so we did those, and it got picked up right away. So then it was like a choice. Well, do I stay and do it? And it seemed intriguing. I had some issues. I'm just rolling along here. If I go on.
Max, roll. I love it, man. I love it. What were your issues?
Well, one of them in the one that was the stakeout, there was a it was thing with Wojo where he, for one thing, he comes into the squad room doing karate. He's in a karate uniform and he does a bunch of karate and he ends up over, right in front of Fish, and then Fish says, "Is that necessary?" So it had to be something. And I told Danny, I said, I don't know karate. I need a day off, or I need to work out something that I can learn some kind of karate moves. He says, "Oh no, they just kind of go around like this and they sort of shout at each other." He said, if this was a skit, or a certain kind of thing, then but if we're supposed to be cops, and this guy is supposed to be a Marine, and the next line was, I think Jack Soo's was, you don't want to cross a guy who can kill you with his thumb, or something. So those were aspects of Wojo that I didn't spend a lot of time focusing on, but that was how it was set up,
Yeah.
And so Danny, when I said I don't know karate, he said, "You don't?" Like, I thought every actor,
What?
So then also typical of Danny, he went and hired the guy who was a big Hawaiian guy. I don't remember his name right now because I don't remember a lot of names right now.
That's okay.
And, but big Hawaiian guy, had him come over to this set, and then he argued with him. He says, "You guys just shout stuff at each other." He says, "No, not really." You don't? Well, it sounds like it.
Oh boy.
So there was that, because it was, I was fairly fit and flexible, so I learned a couple of things. But it was, Danny ended up using it in the credits for a season or more. So the beginning of every show was this sort of over the top, not quite on. If I could go back and really, there was a time where I did get into karate and do something that would have been cool.
Yeah, of course.
It ended up that those dimensions of Wojo weren't the ones that I really ended up exploring. As it kind of moved my way of dealing with some of the things that were written.
Mm-hmm.
That because one of Danny's geniuses was he each character had a part of him in it, but it also had a part of the actor. So we weren't making fun of somebody else.
Yeah,
we were finding the humor within our own things, and I think there's a big difference there.
Oh yeah,
not a comment.
So did you help create Wojo then?
Well, I think that we all helped create our characters, in those ways as it evolved. Originally it was going to be half in the squad room and half at home. The life and times of Captain Barney Miller. Huh. The stuff at home always had sort of a Danny Thomas feel, sort of a retro TV kind of, just didn't quite work, And eventually, the wonderful actress who played Liz, she said, "Danny, if you're only going to bring me down to the squad room, why don't you just let me go?"
Yeah.
So I think that the way that worked, one of the key moments that I really remember, in a way, they did an episode where Wojo busts a guy in the park because he has a American flag sewn on his butt, and he brings him in, and he's pissed. And of course, it's illegal to bust you. It's you can put a flag on your butt, you can burn a flag or anything. Right. The Supreme Court decided that, rightly so, I think. Although there are people trying to change that because they think you can force patriotism on it, or out people, who actually, it's what it is. But and so and I think it turns out in the end that this guy was not, the payoff was he wasn't all that bad a guy, but where took it was this understanding that underneath anger is pain, hurt, and underneath the hurt is an unmet need. So I reacted to it more like he was angry. I mean, interesting when characters and people, most of us, we got a certain amount of thoughts in our head of who we think we are, or who we should be, or what things should be like, or something, but on a heart level or a gut level, so we have another understanding, I agree. So Wojo busts a woman with a shopping cart, an old woman with her shopping, cart, because he thinks this is just terrible, but underneath he his heart is going out to her. He just doesn't know,
Right.
So in this case, I just played that. I mean, didn't make it a dramatic scene, but there was an emotional thing that just happened as I was playing it, and so I think that those more dimensions that I brought became more a part of things that the way Wojo was written, and I think in time I wasn't like I campaigned to do something about Agent Orange, but I
Hmm.
was helping to produce a film on Agent Orange that was, played a significant role in moving that issue forward and stuff, So they had Wojo bring down three people from the military, and call them down to the squad room, and.
Yeah.
So I think that, it was more that way that we all, how we did it was Steve, for instance, when they brought Steve in after Abe left. And, Steve had that wonderful kind of delivery of his comedy. He could
Oh
really
man.
get out there and over the top, but nonetheless, his sort of baseline was kind of not riles, kind of,
I agree.
and so that thing of coming up with this guy that had information on everything,
Yeah.
enabled them actually to, in the theater, they call it laying pipe. You got to get a certain amount of exposition out into the story. It gave them a great way because Landesberg would always have that information and it would be funny because,
His
because of
delivery
the
was
way to
great.
set it up.
Yeah.
So I think, there was that kind of evolution, and I did it for the first half season, and I was having a good time, and we were moving in a direction. So it was like, okay, that went by pretty fast. I guess I'll do the next year. I was still more interested in where it was going to go with the music. It had been a part of my life. I grew up in, as I said, a musical family, and was my, I just that's where I thought I was going, or that's
Yeah.
where.
Wasn't your dad like a big band leader or something like
Yeah,
that?
he was a piano player and he had a big band, before the war
Mhm.
broke out and changed everybody's and
Sure.
then and for my dad and my mom, like a lot of people, the war broke out, people hooked up,
Hmm.
they got married, they met in April, got engaged in July and June and married in July or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No,
There was
very
a lot of
different.
that going on.
Yeah.
But in their case, my mother had four pregnancies, and three of them were twins. So there was my twin sister and I, and then my brother, just 2 years younger, the only single in the family, and then another set of twin girls, just short of a year younger than my brother.
Wow.
So, they call that Irish twins when kids are born within a year of each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
we were Irish triplets, and then another set of twins, so that all seven of us were within 6 years, and the first five were within three. So when the war was over, my dad had seven, well, 5 mouths to feed, and another two pretty quick. So
Amazing.
he
Amazing.
got into booking the bands of the guys who had been in his band
Hmm.
into the Detroit country clubs and weddings, and
Yeah.
wherever they could book music and stuff, and then he'd put himself through college. He'd taken over his uncle's office supply booth in the main office building of Detroit at the time, the Penobscot building. So
Hmm.
he had this office supply building. He was stationed down on Grosse Ile, where I grew up,
Wow.
which was an island in the Detroit River. It's not really a river; it's a strait. It's a narrow body between two lakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of, Detroit is actually north of Windsor, Ontario.
Right. Right.
Because
Sure.
the river bends and then it heads south. So Detroit was north of us. And Grosse Ile was the biggest of a whole lot of islands in that place where it was widening out to become Lake Erie.
Hmm.
But it was big enough that it had a community that lived on it. There was two bridges that went over to the U.S. mainland. It was a pretty far reach over to Canada.
Sounds pretty cool.
It was an interesting place, and there was a Navy base at the south end, and that's how my dad was stationed there, and so we ended up, growing up there.
Wow. Wow.
Uh, and so I'm not sure where I was going with all
Well,
of
it
that
doesn't matter where
information.
you're going. It really doesn't. That's the beauty of my show. Hey, Max, I did have a question on that. You get your MBA from University of Michigan,
Yeah.
and then here you are. You're an actor in Cuckoo's Nest. I'm like, what the heck? Where did you go from? I'm getting an MBA, and now I'm an
Well,
actor.
all right. I mean, these things. There's lots of forms of that question that come up in for people in this kind of interview, and my my soundbite on it came by drift and design. I just think I've had more of a careen than a career. And
I like that.
uh, so what happened there was I went to a small college in Massachusetts. I was pretty much, I think, in line to go to University of Michigan, where my dad went.
Hmm.
But I was an exchange student in Germany the summer before my senior year, and on the way back on a boat with 800 students who'd been exchange students for the summer in different parts of Europe and stuff. And there was a band on the boat, and the piano player, uh, um, for one thing, he was an athlete. He was a wrestler, so and he was also a good piano player.
Yeah.
And he had kind of shaggy hair. I mean, even when the Beatles came out with their long hair, it was not long.
Yeah.
But in those days, I did tend to, in seventh grade, I became kind of a hood. I had my DA haircut and my switchblade knife. And I was a
Oh
little punk
boy.
12-year-old, but rebel without a cause. So
Yeah.
I did tend to be one of the guys that some of the, one in particular, dad would grab my hair, getting a little shaggy there, aren't you, Max? Because those are the days where crew cuts and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ended up with another fellow who was on the boat. We hitchhiked back from New York, and he wanted to see Princeton, and I wanted to see Williams. I'd never heard of it, so I didn't have that. At that time, those East Coast colleges. Who wants to go there?
Yeah.
And so when time came, I decided to go there. They had a program where you could go 3 years to Williams and 2 years to MIT, and you would get a BA from Williams and a BS from MIT.
Wow.
So that was it just gave me cover for people. What are you going to do? What are you going to be?
Right. What are you doing with your life?
The Graduate came out some years later, but it was that thing that was going on, plastics.
Yeah.
If people remember the film The Graduate. And
Yeah.
I realize now these days I can be talking to people and I'm 50 years off from their
No,
life.
I know. I totally know what you mean. You kidding me? I totally get it.
So I after my freshman year and working a summer in a research job for a motor company, and I decided I love the physics, I love the theory, I love the all of chemistry,
Sure.
I loved all of that, but I wasn't drawn to the labs or that sort of thing. I was just eager to get down to football practice. And so anyway, I arced over into economics, which was, the sort of seen as more scientific in many ways. I mean, people have won Nobel Prizes in economics for proving that the assumptions back then were wrong.
Yeah, sure.
But so then I got on a kind of another fluke, getting into my senior year. It was like, now what? If I don't do anything, about it, I'll get drafted.
Yeah.
I could go to officers candidate school, and then I'd be in for another year, and I'd be ordering people to do things that I had questions about. I wasn't so politically fine-tuned against the war, although it was my first time at Williams seeing people speak out against it, and speaking out against civil rights, and that was going on in the times. But I think in my early 30s, I was up late talking one night with my mother. Her father, my grandpa Jack, who was a sweet old, Irish grandpa, but he was a World War One psychological casualty. He had some experiences. So while she was growing up, he was sometimes, they were high on the hog, living on Fifth Avenue or New Rochelle, and then he'd go off on a bender for months at a time. And she kind of planted in my head and my younger brothers, I think, whatever you do, don't
go.
Go.
Yeah.
So when opportunities, and one of those opportunities was this somebody said, oh, there's a guy from the Detroit area over there in the placement department, whatever they call the place where you do job interviews and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah, 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 yeah.
from a small country day school in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which was, I was on Grosse Ile, but we were downriver. I associated a lot with downriver, was more the industrial side, and
Yep.
our league was really like a farm league, but Grosse Pointe was, but anyway, he was looking for an eighth grade boys history and English teacher, and did not care at all that I had no education or history classes. I went to an Eastern college and I played sports, and that's what the dads were hoping their young
Oh
sons
my
would turn out
gosh.
to be, whether
Classic.
they might or not. That
Yeah.
was, so that's the job I got, and I did that for 2 years, and I loved the kids and stuff, but mostly the school was the kids' parking lot was all new cars
Yeah.
because they were the children of the Fords and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
And the teachers'
Yeah.
parking lot was all old cars, but they loved the fact, that they were teaching the kids.
Of
Anyway,
course.
it was kind of like, so called out to Ann Arbor, and the only school that was still accepting applications was the business school.
Wow.
But I was an economics major, so I got in, and
Yeah.
that's how. So I have often said I got my MBA majoring in staying out of Vietnam.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So I mean, we're all veterans of the era,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, and at the time, you had Rambo. You had a lot of parts written about Vietnam guys who would become drug addicts or stuff like that.
Yeah.
We had, of course, John Voight's incredible performance in Coming Home.
Yeah.
But I also knew there were a lot of vets who came back and found a way to function and dealt with stuff. I didn't want to go at Danny's having been a Marine, but he was a Marine in the Korean War.
Right.
So he had kind of those sensibilities of the Marine, and so anyway, that's kind of how that worked. I did.
Gotcha.
My mother had been an actress before she got married. My dad was a musician. My twin sister and my brother were kind of into theater and stuff.
So
It
it was
wasn't
around.
my thing, but it wasn't like this is the
Yeah.
weirdest thing that could ever
Yeah.
happen. It
Did you,
was. Go
by the
ahead.
way, you just made me think when you were doing Wojo then, did you do any kind of improv at all on between the characters, or was it always just that written then?
Well, a little of both. We didn't do so much improv as a way of working, and there's two improvs in the acting world. There's the one that's known as like the improv theater and stuff.
Right.
There are forms, there are kind of rules of somebody brings up something, you don't negate it.
Right. It's always yes, it's
You
not
take
no.
it yes
Yeah.
and,
Right.
but and then there's improv that's very much a part of like the method, the actor studio and all, which is what's going on before the scene opens. Or if this is an argument, let's improv arguing
Yeah.
and then slip into the dialogue,
Right.
so
Right.
you get to things that aren't just the idea as you read it, the idea of how it sounds,
Right.
because that keeps you from being alive in the moment. We did have kind of feedback at times when in the time of like putting it on its feet, as they say. You sit
Mhm.
around and read, you kind of get the idea. It's like a radio play in a way, I mean,
Oh, totally. A table read? Yeah.
when it comes to, okay, so how is it that Harris is talking with his person he's busted or coming to complain or something, and then there's a line from Wojo or Yamana or something, because they're at the files. Well,
Hmm.
how do you time that out so they come over there and then they get what they want? A whole lot of stuff that just takes working through it to find it. And sometimes we would find a line there or something. But
Interesting.
what almost always happened when we'd share it with Danny, or a problem to be worked out on that kind of timing, Levitt did not have time to go all the way downstairs and come back and get back in the room at a time. If you watched it played, you'd go like, no, that doesn't compute.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of things that throw people out or limit their involvement. If you see, you're watching something, you see something that doesn't make any sense, you sort of you sort of change your investment in it.
Right.
I mean, you might just turn it off, but usually you're invested in a certain part of it. So, and Danny didn't really he didn't really like doing that part of it. But always, if we had come up with a line or something we thought was pretty good, Danny would go. He'd take a walk, not long walk down into the dark part of the sound stage we weren't using, and then you'd see him, his back. He'd go from the back. You'd see him go, and he'd come back kind of giggling to himself, and he would have a line or something that solved all of the issues and more about what was going on there, and just made it more deeply funny and stuff.
That's cool. That's actually really cool that he took it in like that, and then he
didn't go, no, I wrote it this way. The only time that I know of for sure, and Hal tells this story really well, but we did an episode also early on. Danny had a kind of a fascination that was usually put on, almost always put onto Wojo, of falling for a prostitute. So they had this thing where Wojo kept busting. In those days, it was all seen as a victimless crime, So Wojo kept busting this house, because he had a crush on one of the girls. Nancy Bissell played that part,
I totally remember this.
So finally it ends with, he kind of says, would you like to go out sometime? And she says, sure, just pay what everybody else does, $50, right. Inflation. But so anyway, it ends with Barney and Wojo are, the last ones to leave. And Barney's saying some bit of, wisdom to him. Anyway, Wojo says, hey, Barn, could you lend me $50 until payday? So that pays off the whole show, really.
Totally.
But the network people were having trouble with it, and they said to Danny, like, the problem is people might think that he's going to use the money for the 50. Danny said that's the whole.
That is the point, exactly.
But and so the time came where we had got Noam Pitlick was directing that show, and we'd gotten to that place, and Danny was up in his office on the phone with the network, who were still saying, and Noam says, so what do we do? And Danny says, shoot it like I wrote it. And then he told them, if you censor this or anything, then I'm going to stop doing the show.
Wow.
So, he had racehorses, and he liked to bet, and he put it all on the line because he had a lot on the line for that show.
That's cool. Did you, by the way, how close were you with Hal? Because, I think everybody knows, anybody that is a fan of the show, there's that bond you guys had. It was like you could call it a father-son or older brother, younger brother, but
I think of it more that way because he's not old enough to be my dad. But a lot of people saw it that way, but then again, those dynamics sort of overlap in a way. But well, I decided, when the pilot was picked up, and then I had to decide, am I going to do this or not?
Yeah.
And I remember I went down to Isla Mujeres down in Mexico with a friend of mine who was also going through a big decision he had to make about, was he going to go this way or that way?
Oh my gosh.
Life, And I remember at a certain point, and this guy, John, he was like fourth in the nationals in wrestling, just a bigger than life guy. But at a certain point, he was talking and he gave this gesture that I really would associate with Tevyev and Fiddler on the Roof, if you know that great moment when he's talking, his daughter is falling in love, he's got tradition, but I love my daughter. On the other hand, tradition, and then he goes, tradition. And he's going to go with the heart,
Yep.
So for me, it gave me the sense that with all of the conflicts around all that was going on in the country at that time, and all the sort of beliefs that Wojo had gone into life with, but that he had a kind of respect for Barney.
Hmm.
and in some way he did know that there was a thing with the Poles and the Jews, and he
Hmm.
knew he grew up more in a farm community in upstate New York, so he didn't. But he knew these things, and he had been in Vietnam, so he'd been around he saw a whole lot of stuff.
Hmm.
He wasn't all politic about it. He was, there were a lot of people like this, and so I went with that.
Hmm.
That there was that kind of, and I think that they picked up on that, and they, just it became something that we'd find more in the scene maybe than they expected,
Hmm.
and then they'd write for more, and then it became a way. It was wonderful. I loved doing
Oh my
those
gosh.
scenes in the office with Hal.
Yeah.
Hal at the time was, he had three teenagers and one at the doorway.
Wow.
So, and he had spent, a lot of his life, not being the star, man. And he did, for a long time, he was kind of the go-to backup guy, for Broadway. But it wasn't until really the Rothschilds. I mean, he was around for a long time and doing good
Hmm.
work before. Now he was the star of a TV show,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and dealing with raising kids and all of that. And I was still single. And, I got into the music through brought me to a connection with a Native American artist named Buffy St. Marie.
Pretty
And
famous, by the way.
yeah, Buffy
Yeah.
was, at that point, I mean, her career, there was a time where it was sort of Buffy and Bob Dylan and Joan Baez
Hmm.
that kind of led. There had been others, that had done Woody Guthrie and all that. It wasn't
Sure.
there
Sure.
wasn't a tradition of social change, but there was also at that time the new Christy Minstrels and the
Right.
Lime. There was a folk that was very sort of mainstream entertainment, and
Yeah.
and but Buffy's message being more severe maybe than the others, or in certain ways right at the heart of
Hmm.
America, where Native Americans are kind of in our blind spot, of our
Yeah.
country, and but I had connected with Buffy, and we were on my songs. There was somebody I was seeing at the time was friends and was helping her put a tour together. Eventually, it didn't happen.
Yeah. What? Tell me this. Tell me this,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna have people that are gonna, and they'll go, "Wait, I want to hear more about Barney Miller."
Okay.
What? First of all, were all of you guys close offset? Like Jack Soo and Hal Linden and Ron, and yeah, were all you guys close?
Um, you know, not so much offset, because we had our different lives, and Steve was doing his stand up, and Hal had his kids, and we spent a lot of time together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're missing each other. We spent and we would work late into the night on
You
shooting nights.
worked, by the way, I was kind of blown away when you say late into the night. I heard like 2 in the morning.
Oh, we had a few shows where when we came out, the sun was coming up.
I mean, how? What? I mean, I'm just blown away by
Yeah.
that you guys
Well,
work that late.
a
Why?
certain part, early on, we got rid of the studio audience. Once we were on the air, the studio audiences, I mean, most shows, they had a studio audience and a comedian, and sometimes they'd have a band. They
Yeah,
kind of get everybody really pumped up, and they're ready to laugh at
right.
everything. That kind of didn't work for Barney Miller because a lot of the humor was, kind of something funny and then something funny and then something and then a payoff. Or,
Yeah,
I mean, it was just subtler than that,
right.
and but also Danny wanted to be able to edit more from the old video with the called switch feed. We're going to go to this camera, then we're going to that camera, and
Hmm.
he had also a great editing background, and he had changed the way, instead of on camera rehearsal and shooting days, the director being off somewhere in a room that had the monitors and
Hmm.
all the other helpers and stuff, and he'd be they talk over the mic, where because sometimes even if you just move forward a little bit, you get into somebody's shot. You're talking to somebody
Yeah,
over here, but their camera is over there,
right.
so you're gonna get on the,
Yeah,
so if you
yeah.
get in a shot, well, so and they say, Max, could you take a step back or something,
Oh my
and
gosh.
and I was, because you were just supposed to be there to do the camera blocking, you were,
Yeah.
but I was the one, because I was certainly the least experienced and maybe disciplined in a certain kind of way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I would be the one that'd go like, I don't think we've quite worked out this moment here, right? Now that we're on these lines, I think there's something we don't. I mean, we get the joke, but
Wow.
and then Danny would say, "Okay, wait a minute," and we'd wait, and eventually he'd get down, and you'd hear his footsteps on the stage, and he'd come down. We would work it out, and I think for me, then I was just looking for how to find the reality of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Were
Ron
the
had a
other
great
actors
deal of
open to that, by
experience.
the way? Were the
Well,
other actors?
I think I caused a certain amount of eye rolling, but in time it proved to be valuable.
Hmm.
The part of us that this could have been a cop's, you know,
Hmm.
not like the I can't remember the name of the duo that
Starsky and Hutch?
Starsky and Hutch, where
Sure.
it wasn't like but for police who almost always say we had the most realistic cop show on the air,
Yeah, and
because they
they
didn't spend their time jumping over car hoods and
right.
into rooms like this and stuff. So, but it did pay off. I mean, Hal had done musical comedy, and there's sort of this way, all these different genres. There is something about them,
Hmm.
that particular way of storytelling.
Oh yeah.
Ron Glass had done a lot of Shakespeare, but still it was like you're executing theatrically in a way, and I didn't have any of that craft.
Right.
I was looking for what I could believe in.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
That's so
And
beautiful though that all you guys were coming together on these different wavelengths. By the way,
yes,
what was we should look at each of these guys because you all were very unique. I mean, one thing that I liked about Barney Miller is I felt like each of the characters had a specific identification. I
yes,
knew he's this, he's that, he's that.
yeah,
What
yeah.
what was it
But
like working?
not so much reduced to a cliche or a
Oh
stereotype
no.
as that he's a complex human being
Right.
with a whole
Right.
bunch of stuff going on,
Right.
and he's another one with a whole bunch of other stuff going on.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was Jack Soo like, by the way?
Well, Jack, Jack, of course, he and Danny have been friends for a long time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They went way back when they had, Jack Soo, at one point he was Joey Bishop's partner, and then the war broke out.
I didn't know
He
that.
was he was Jack Suzuki then,
Wow.
Oro Suzuki actually, but I mean, so he did change his name to a more Chinese sounding name, but
Uh-huh.
so they had their experiences on the road together as comedians and stuff like that,
Oh,
and of
wow.
course Jack did become, there was a star on Broadway with Flower Drum Song and in
Right.
film and stuff. Um, but he also, and this really connected, for me when I started getting involved with the Native American stuff,
Hmm.
because he was like many Chinese people. He had been put in a concentration camp.
Was he at Manzanar? The one
I'm
out
not
in
sure. I'm actually not sure which one he was
oh,
at.
okay.
I
Okay.
know, but I'm not sure in the
Yeah, yeah,
moment.
yeah. I understand.
There's a wonderful film on him called "You Don't Know Jack." But he was like amongst a lot of the Japanese men who joined the army, like many Japanese men who signed up and served in a Japanese division or whatever,
Yeah.
unit in Italy. Okay, so and he didn't, he was not a bitter person. He didn't bury it, but he chose not to be a bitter person,
Interesting.
or to deal with it,
Hmm.
and I mean, and a kind of a lens that can be misused, but he did die of cancer as a relatively young man,
Yeah.
so
Well, did you know, by the
suppressing
way?
stress. Hmm?
Did you know that he because he died while the show was still on the air.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you know that he was sick?
Yes, I did. We all knew he was. We knew, and Steve actually spent the most time with him in the hospital.
Mm.
but yeah, I knew he was sick. As a matter of fact, the first show, there was a time where Hal and I directed a couple of his shows.
Oh,
Yeah, and the reason for that was that as we got on the air and kind of got our legs and stuff, in the rules of the business there, you can't produce and write and direct.
hmm.
You can do two of those. You can be a producer writer or a producer director, but you can't do all three.
Oh, how
I think the
fun.
unions work that out, so they can't have people that take up that many jobs.
Interesting.
So they would hire people to come in and direct the show. And now we were this up and coming comedy. So people would come in, they'd really want to make their mark. And the way a lot of shows were done, they'd have the script, they'd put it on its feet. The writers would come down and watch it. If something worked, well, then you would just kind of drill that all week long. And the rest of it would get rewritten in the next day. We were more like we had the beginnings of a script. There might have been a whole one to begin with, but they were going to write the end and kind of have it tie up with what we had discovered in the process going on. And so sometimes we would get those last few pages after we'd shot all the way up to it.
Oh my
And at
God.
2 a.m, we'd sit down, and read the
Wow.
last pages. But it was based on what we had found.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just what the writers came up with because something wasn't working. So there was a difference there. Not that that process didn't work great for other shows and all, but it was hard for the directors because Danny would come down, we'd kind of get started, and then he'd go to the director, Joe, I just want to say something, and within a few minutes, he would be directing. And the director, who was thinking, I'm going to do a Barney Miller, and then it's going to get me other work and everything, they'd be having a kind of a identity crisis. And Hal and I were usually the ones that were kind of saying, it's all right, this is kind of how it goes. And so we went to Danny and said, why don't you let us direct? During the week, we can work out all those things that you're not very interested in, and so Hal did too, and by then Danny had gotten this thing where instead of up in the room I was talking about, there would be 4 monitors. We called it the quad, 4 monitors put, on a stand.
Yeah.
And so if you're directing, that would be just outside of the 4 cameras that were kind of around.
Oh, interesting.
And so even when we were blocking, you could just look over there and see what the camera issue was.
That's so helpful.
And then the director could be like, right there, we do a take, so in a way, it was more like film. I mean, they'd do one that got kind of all the coverage, and then we could do it again and come in for closer coverage. And Danny would always do that, so Hal directed, Danny came down, he took over. Then it was my turn, and Danny came down, kind of walked up to the edge, everybody turns to look, as Hal had been doing, I got out of the chair, said, here it is. And he said, well, good night, everybody.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
He left, which I guess was a really big sort of trust or compliment or something to me,
Oh, sure.
But everybody on the set, including me, went, oh, fuck, excuse me.
No, it's okay. You can say that. It's okay.
But, it worked out. Everybody pulled together, because I was that one at least I wasn't really a hippie, never really, but I had come down from San Francisco, and I was more like that than anybody else,
Were you comfortable directing?
Actually, no, because it's just a lot to do, to be,
it is
to be in character, and then, so I think I did one other, but by then, Noam Pitlick, who had directed a few in the beginning, and he was done with something that he'd been obligated to, and Danny brought him in, and he ended up directing all of them. So he got the show, it was, and of course, when Danny at a certain point, with the way he was working all night and getting these scripts and stuff, he gave himself he had a heart attack, and then he had a stroke while he was in the hospital with a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
So he healed up, but by then it got kind of turned over to some younger writers, and
wow.
Toward the last year he came back in, but he just physically he couldn't make that kind of commitment.
Wow, that's really so he has that, and then Jack Soo, obviously going back to he passes away as well during the show.
Yeah, yeah.
So Landesberg was there. Were you guys hearing from, the hospital, or were you in touch?
Steve would have information, or sometimes Hal. It wasn't he wasn't in the hospital a long time.
Yeah.
And so we had a sense of how he was doing, but it was like let's keep hope alive sort of thing. I mean, it wasn't there's good news is and
Did you get to say goodbye?
um no,
Mm,
I didn't.
gotcha.
I didn't. Which I feel I've kind of missed. I mean, I think we were good with each other. Actually, Jack, I learned later that on that show that I was directing, Jack was supposed to go into the hospital the week before,
I'll be damned.
but he put off going into the hospital because he didn't want to let me down.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he
Wow.
he got what was going on for me around the Native American stuff. I mean, he wasn't
Oh, of course.
but I mean, he got it.
Yeah.
And
That makes
so
sense. That makes total sense. What about Abe Vigoda? I mean, honestly, out of anybody in that show, he is like the enigma to me. He's like, how do you classify Abe Vigoda? You know what I mean?
hard to do. He's definitely Abe Vigoda. For one thing, Abe was not as old as Fish. And he was a
Yeah,
very
he
good.
looks so old. I mean
Well,
that in the best
he was a
way.
wonderful actor, and I think he was playing old men when he was 16. And he had a long history in theater, but I think he looked kind of old. He definitely had that look.
Yeah.
He said he used to tell when he first went in to meet Danny, and of course at that point he had done The Godfather.
Right. Oh yeah, he
So
played
he went from pretty much an obscure theater actor to a significant part in The Godfather.
yes. Yes.
And he came in to read for a different part, but apparently Danny said, "What do you have? You look like you have hemorrhoids. You have hemorrhoids." And he said, "What are you, a doctor or a producer?" But Danny came up with the role of Fish for him,
I'll be darned.
and they had their sort of conflicts in a way because Abe would really had a wonderful way of working, but it was not. It was more, I guess, method. Although he didn't talk about it in those terms, but on our breaks, he would often sit through the break, just stay right there at his desk, twirling his pencil, just being Fish. So
Wow.
he had something about him. A lot of the times, his biggest laughs, the one when we still had a studio audience, the
Yeah.
ones that would make it into that would be the big when something would happen and then he'd get up. The joke was he gets up and goes to the bathroom
Oh my
or
God.
something. So it was easy for Danny to kind of think that was all writing, and it was easy for Fish to think it was all acting.
Yeah.
And Fish having come from having his big moment, but also being around Marlon Brando and stuff. So the second season, early on, he one of the things he asked for was they changed the name of the show to Barney and Fish.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then the
I'm sorry.
network
That's funny.
wanted to do a spinoff, because they have that in their, they set up financially. If they can get a spinoff, they got a less of risk. Another show, it's business.
Yeah, of course.
But it was, there were those issues. But Abe, had a wonderful way of working, and he was, by the way, a really good handball player. And Hal talks about the time that he went and played handball with Abe and just got his ass kicked. I mean, he was, if you know squash or handball,
I do.
the game.
Oh, and it's
You,
not for the soft, faint-hearted. You got to
yeah, or the novice.
right.
And so, but there was a time we did an episode where a guy, a really tall actor, intentionally cast that way. The guy's about 6'8" or something.
Yeah.
And he gets out to go to the bathroom, and he's in the bathroom for a long time. And so somebody goes in to check on him, comes back and say he's dead. And for some reason, this all got set around I'm at my chair as I remember it, and everybody's kind of around me, but we're trying to come in. And the dialogue was, he's dead. He's dead. Yes, he unscrewed the light bulb and he took put his foot in the toilet and stuck his finger in the light bulb and executed himself, electrocuted himself.
Come on.
And Fish has the line, I didn't realize he was that tall.
Right.
And Hal's going like, how should we play this? Let's think of for a minute how we're playing this. We've not had anybody die in the squad room, and stuff like that. And so we're having that conversation, and Danny was there, and he's kind of like, okay, these actors sometimes they need to,
right? They need
whatever.
To talk it out.
We're having that conversation, and Abe says, "I know," and of course, Fish wore one of those old fedoras.
Yeah, I remember.
He said, "We should play it with a loose hat." Well, I thought that was brilliant, because, you can tip your hand up, say, right. Kid, I think, I like you. You and I should get married,
Yeah, right.
That kind of, or pull it down. Where were you on the night of,
Totally.
So I thought it was a wonderful, and I remember Hal and Danny looking at each other like, what? So, I mean, he had this kind of poetic thing that he brought to his work.
It's interesting.
And, so he stuck with people in a way that's, like nobody else really. Of all
you can't forget him. Another one that was on the show, Gregory Sierra.
Yeah.
I think he's another one for me that, like, I never forget him. I remembered him when he's Sanford and Son, and then he's on there. What was he like, though?
Greg was a wonderful guy and a wonderful actor and very committed and had done a lot of Shakespeare and other theater, and so he did Sanford and Son, and they made a deal with him. But they came to him and they said, we haven't quite figured out what show, but we'd like you to go into Barney Miller here, and we promise that within 2 years we'll do some kind of spinoff that will be your show.
Interesting.
So he agreed. So it came time to honor that, and they came up with this medical show idea. But Greg did not want to do the accent anymore.
Yeah,
he didn't have an accent.
Wow. I always thought he did. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and Danny felt like, I don't know how to write for you if you don't have an accent. That's what's funny, Wow. And they had there was that standoff down to the last minute in a way of, and so again, I think Danny's like with Abe's spinoff, his heart wasn't really in it. There was money in it for it, but mainly it was contractually. He had to do it.
Yeah.
And Gregory by then had felt like, these people are not honoring me, and a certain amount of it, he thought, for wrong or right or to ever whatever degree, it had to do with a kind of prejudice or kind of lack of respect.
Yeah, it was played like the Puerto Rican.
So it's the reason that when they then came up with this spinoff for Wojo, I didn't really want to do it. By then, I just had 2 years on my contract. I was having a great time. I watched what happened with these other shows.
Yeah. What did you do then? What happened?
Well, part of it was, they had, I saw that I really had no real voice in that. They brought me in a few times to read with some actresses, but it was clear that I talked to him. I said, well, so what does Wojo do? There was still that theme that he kind of maybe gets with a working girl or somebody, Yeah. And I said, so does he keep being a cop?
Right.
And, what happens? And I said, what if his life becomes about people who are also going through big changes? The postman who's retired. And,
yeah.
What if it's like kind of it's like about nothing, in the sense it's not about a police station or a radio station,
right?
Just about life in all these odd ways. Which interestingly enough, when Seinfeld came, they said it's about nothing.
That's exactly right.
But and I actually wanted, there was an actress named Helena Kostianidis.
Hmm.
And Helena was in a couple of movies with Jack Nicholson. She was part of that crowd. She had a club. I didn't know about it or what didn't go to it because I was more into the Indian thing.
Right,
I
right,
was
right.
leaving town every weekend, you know.
Yeah.
But I knew her because she had started this roller skating thing for people who were like people who
My gosh.
everybody could go and roller skate and they wouldn't let any paparazzi in or anything like that.
Interesting.
They kept them away from the place, you know.
How interesting.
So I knew her, and she's just one Greek. She was a belly dance. She was, you know, just a really somebody you say, wow, this is somebody that
Yeah,
could
yeah,
like
yeah.
match Wojo and what you know. But they were not. They wanted, you know, they it just didn't go that way. And I kept saying to Danny, he finally said, okay,
Yeah.
I'll give you a letter that says that you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. Because he was kind of locked in, you know,
Oh
saying, I
my
don't really want
gosh.
to leave, you know. I think that he was making the bet that if it happened,
Yeah.
that I would, you know, but it was not I mean, I just didn't, you
You
know,
didn't feel it.
and I didn't feel it. And you know, I didn't want to leave Barney Miller.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you didn't. I mean,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, maybe I didn't have enough confidence in myself or drive or something. I was much more interested in by then, you know, into where to follow out this sort of thing, you know, a lot of which was because Barney Miller did deal with a whole lot of issues that were
It did.
political,
It did.
but it found the humor in them and the
Right.
humanity and the, you know, so I was interested in how to take that with these
I don't
other
see
things.
Barney Miller without you. I mean, I mean, to be honest with you, if had you, I understand some of these other guys stepping away, or, you know, obviously in case of Jack, he passed away, but
Yeah,
I, I'm sorry, it's like taking Hal out of Barney Miller. I don't see
yeah,
it. So yeah, that's a big blow. By the
I,
way, we didn't even talk about Hal, which people
yeah,
will definitely ask me about.
yeah.
What was what was it like working with Hal then as a, and I know we had talked about the mentor, but what was it like working with him, playing off of him as an actor and things like that?
Well, for one thing, just in the sort of the whole of the show, because Hal had been a musician and then done a lot of musical comedy, so there's a whole lot of, you know, you got to work things out. You know, you got dance routines, you got song, you know.
Right.
So Hal could always hold that center, and he also held the kind of straight man center. You know, I mean, he got his laughs. He was able to get his
Oh,
laughs, but
sure.
for the
Yeah.
most part, he was there at that center. You know, when we all got stoned because Wojo's girlfriend sent hash brownies.
The brownies. Yeah, you're
You
right.
know, he was the only one that didn't eat any brownies.
Yeah.
So, you know, so especially those late nights when it was all new. So I mean, he could hold that, you know, and as I say, I loved our exchanges and you know, the stuff we played. He was, you know, uh, um, he never like made a quip or took this kind of the star role. I'm the star. Certainly not in
Mhm.
asking for more of
Mhm.
this. Never exhibited any kind of idea that he was better than anyone, or you know, I don't think because I don't think that's who he is.
Yeah.
He sees it, you know. I think that there were, uh, you know, there were different reactions given just how different people felt about this guy who looked like he was captain of the football team and an
Mhm.
astronaut and all of those things. And he wasn't really, and he didn't see himself in that way, you know. So sometimes he would say something that might trigger somebody in a way because they thought he should be more I don't know, gracious about it, where he was just being one of the guys, you know.
Right. Right.
So there was some, I mean, you know, we were like a family, and in the families, everybody doesn't get along with everybody all the time.
No.
Some people are more sensitive to what,
Right. Right.
one of my youngest sisters, because she has a twin, but sister, she still is feeling the slights from my younger brother.
Oh, I'm sure. Come
Because
on.
he could be kind of merciless and teasing people,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, she's in her 70s and still,
Still
you
holds
know,
it. Yeah.
so
Are you still close with Hal?
yeah, I actually closer now because, as I said, he had teenage kids, and I was, so over time, I mean, right after Barney Miller,
Yeah.
I got married and had a kid, and I did a show called Whiz Kids,
You're right.
and then I did a play on Broadway, is one man show on Babe Ruth, and when on our sort of night of our dress rehearsal, we found out that my wife had colon cancer.
Oh, geez.
I mean, it took a few days to figure out, but she went in the hospital and stuff. So that was a big turn in my life. Our daughter was 8 months old. 2 years later, Willie passed away, and so my life took me off into all of that. I
Did
didn't.
you stop acting?
Yeah, because I was going in to meet for a meeting on a show that it hadn't been offered to me yet, but it seemed like it was kind of there. I loved the concept called Quantum Leap.
Sure.
And I've got my daughter in the back, very way back seat of the van, and I'm driving in because the person that was going to sit for her was not available suddenly.
Totally.
I'm telling her, it'll be okay. I might have to go in this other room to read, but I've got some art stuff, and it's going to be fine.
Yep.
And then I realized I pulled over. I was going over Malibu Canyon, who people know the area, and I pulled
Sure.
over and turned. I thought, I can't do an hour-long episodic show.
Right.
Those are long hours. I'll have a nanny raising my daughter. I just can't do it.
You'll never see her. Yeah.
And I went down to the nearest phone booth because we didn't have them in hands.
Right.
And called up the producer and said, I'm really honored, but I can't do it. I didn't know that within a short period of time, somebody had been seen, and we, ended up, and my son Maxwell was coming, and we got married, and India had her new mom, and all of that. I didn't know that was in the offing, if I did.
Yeah, but you did something that a lot of guys, a lot of people might not have done, and man, I got a lot of respect for you in that because you were dead on right.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it certainly was a change, and when I did get back to working, I found I did a show with Frank Zappa's two oldest kids, which was a neat idea, but I think the network didn't have any sense of
Is that Dweezil
what their idea was. Dweezil
and Moon?
Yeah. I think they thought that Dweezil would be another Kirk Cameron, and Moon was along for the ride.
Right.
And it was so it didn't really work out, and I was in a place to say, okay, this is the second time in my life I've had a new series and a new wife and a new baby. And the first time around, I didn't really pay so much attention because once we found out that my wife had cancer, I could look back and see that there were definite signs along the way.
Yeah.
That she was feeling, and there was, so I didn't want to do that again. So anyway, it's certainly an impact in life.
Come on, of course. But
I
will tell you, as a dad,
yeah,
I respect that. And, I have an acting background as well, and not quite on that level that you hit it, but I was out there. I know the whole routine, and you did the right thing. I'm going to tell you that right now, because I know plenty of guys that didn't make that decision, and they never even saw their kid, So,
and I think those kind of costs, they show up in the families. Not that everything is worked out perfectly and everything, because life is life, and your kids have their lives to live, but
they definitely affect them.
Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah,
no, that's big. Hey, on a whole nother note, there was one of the guys on the show that I just remember him so much from the I guess the classic movies. James Gregory. He was such a classic old actor. What was he like? Like, actually like?
Well, he was. I mean, first of all, he was an incredible actor. I mean, he could do hardcore World War II movies,
Oh
and he did
yeah.
Elvis movies. He came in and created this character, and he'd come in fully prepared and
Wow.
stay very focused over, So it was kind of like the way the inspector was, in the sense that he kind of came in, he'd say, "How you doing there?" And then he wouldn't listen for the answer, and
Right.
he was really wonderful. And
He had that voice, that voice
yeah,
of his.
yeah, and so I have a story about Jim, and then I want to say that I do want to get to some of the things that I'm into now, all of which had their roots back in that time.
You got it.
And I
Let's
put them
let's
all,
do it.
kind of put them aside for all the family and child rearing and stuff like that, and
No
see
problem at
maybe
all.
where they overlap with, because you found your way to doing this,
Yeah,
and
I
I
hear
think
you.
people sharing their stories with each other is how we can get past this polarization that we're caught
I
in now.
agree 100% with
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So, so there was a time we were nominated for an Emmy. So, and we'd all been at that. The first one I was off doing the documentary stuff, but the second one, so I ended up at Jim Gregory's house with he and his wife. And there had been a joke that went around the set that day. And the joke was, I'll share it with you because you have to participate. Say, ask me what's the most important element of comedy?
What is the most important element of comedy?
Timing. So that was the joke. Okay. So Jim says, so I'm over on the counter rolling a joint, and Jim's making an old fashioned or something for he and his wife.
Good
So I
time.
said, what was that? What was that joke that was going on around the day? Everybody was laughing at that joke. I say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Ask me what's the most important element of comedy. He says it's seriousness, and he would just like Inspector Louis, he'd stomp his foot for emphasis, just seriousness. I say, no, in order for it to get the joke, you have to ask me. He looks at me like, why would I ask you? Good natured. I was okay with him. I was at his house, but okay, what's the most important element of comedy? And I stepped on it and said, timing. He says, no, it's not. It's seriousness. But that's really important. I mean, that's where it
Right.
was that you like play for where's the humanity and what's going on there. It'll
Right.
be funnier in a different way than if you just play it to be funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Him
so,
delivering that, I'm sorry. I can hear him
yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Oh,
So to that point I just
yeah.
mentioned, as I say that I got involved. I mean, the first was found myself on telethons and stuff like that on
Sure.
some of your local talk shows. But it was always around this kind of the TV was a certain world, and the conversations and the questions, and even if you tried to shift it to something more meaningful,
Right.
to me anyway, it would be changed,
Oh, sure. I
for
can,
something.
especially that time.
Yeah. I still remember it. I wrote this rhyme for the guy from the TV Guide article that wanted to say that I was from Grosse Pointe. I was a smart guy that went to a good college who was playing a dumb guy, and I was from Grosse Pointe, whereas Wojo was a kind of blue collar,
Right.
and
Right.
this was not at all what I was sharing or wanting to say or anything. You just so I still remember this. I wrote, the writer I can least abide is one who thinks he's on my side and takes the story I confide and fixes it for TV Guide.
Oh my God, that's a
Now,
good one.
and then he goes, now I don't want to start a fight. Life involves much deeper plight, but even in his narrow light, couldn't he get my hometown right? Because if you were from Grosse Ile downriver,
Right.
you did not
Right.
want to be
Right.
characterized as being
No, they're
from
two
Grosse
different
Pointe.
areas. Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's a good rhyme, by the
So,
way. Oh, I
so
like it.
well, it's one of the things that I can do or whatever. But anyway, I got involved in this stuff and found that it was very difficult to to bring these issues into interviews and stuff, but a portable video had just shown up. So I started working in a way I could provide the video and work with other documentary filmmakers who before then had to shoot in 16 millimeter film, which meant they only had enough money for this much film and to get it developed.
Oh, totally. I remember how expensive it was. Yeah.
And just to be, going around to where I was going and partnering with people and getting people this sort of docu-musical idea I'd talked about, and use that to pitch the network. And unfortunately, during 1980, the hostage crisis happened in Iran.
Right.
That's kind of coming back into our national radar scope or whatever these days. But that Nightline was born.
Sure.
So they had this, so that kind of took away that time slot that they were maybe willing to try something with.
Yeah.
So I have all of those tapes that all got put on the back burner. But in a lot of ways, even though it's 45 years ago, there's a lot of the things that people were dealing with then that are here now around environmentalism and Native American, Hegseth just, the Wounded Knee was a massacre. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre.
Right.
And the soldiers who were killed at Wounded Knee were killed by friendly fire because they'd gone down into the encampment to take the guns away from people. And there was one deaf Native American. He wanted them to take the gun, and it got fired off and they opened fire with machine guns and killed a whole lot of people, including a lot of soldiers. So they were given these medals.
Right.
But at a certain time, they were taken away by people. Say they were not heroes. So anyway, I think that there's a lot of that's relevant, and it's tricky now. There aren't that many 3/4 inch machines to try to show them on. They're old, they get moldy, they have to be baked, but I've got 15 boxes of them in my van right now.
Gosh, 15 boxes.
I found somebody who has got a machine. I think that there's a value to them at a minimum out in the Native American world. People who did not, a lot of things were established during those times, and then it's gone on to have other things. There's pluses and minuses that have come out of the casinos. There's been money there, so a lot of they got together and created a Native American Gambling Association because initially it was the people from the gambling world were taking over, and then they were doling out money to some people, but people said, no, well, let's use this money to set up our own businesses and our healthcare and stuff like that.
Right. It's a lot of money.
So anyway, I'm interested in doing that. All these songs. Also, my wife Willie had connected with my best man, Merle Saunders. He's not with us anymore, but a much beloved musician from up here in San Francisco. Played with everybody from Miles to Jerry Garcia and stuff. And he had come down with his son Tony, who has, if you're into smooth jazz, Tony Saunders has had a string of #1 and top 5 albums, all under the heading of romancing the bass, because he's kind of turned the bass into a lead instrument. So those of you who want some really good smooth jazz, but anyway, I recently got those tapes baked and digitized, and I have them up on. I never did get around to doing the final vocals. They're rough mixes. I kind of got everybody that was playing on there, but a friend said, let's put them up anyway. So they're on Spotify and Apple Music, and anybody that's interested, you can reach me at maxgale.com, or we're getting the Facebook. I had a Facebook page that somebody started, and it had a lot of followers, and just around, Barney Miller and General Hospital was kind of there, but somebody hacked us, and they were able to do it because they put out a nice pay to do an interview. It turned out it was bogus. Yeah. And they got through into my person who set this up and everything, and got into and became an admin.
Oh no.
For reasons that we didn't get, but I was going, oh well, okay, all right, and then hijacked the site. turned all those viewers over to some sort of hip hop group, and I mean, they just did it but you got to
Wow.
start rebuilding from the beginning again.
Well,
So we had about 66,000 people.
oh, geez, come on.
It's not a lot, but there were people who really, got Barney Miller and other things that I'd done and got the kind of the issues and that connection and stuff. So looking to rebuild that, but
Where on Spotify, you mentioned Spotify, so if
it's
somebody
Max
wants,
Gale. Max
just
Gale.
put in Max
I
Gale.
think if you also the guy that did this for me put Evergreen Recordings because some were
Okay.
recorded at a studio down. Most of them were done in L.A., but there was a time I went down to Texas, West Texas. One of my sisters had been living in Alaska, and she got into bluegrass music, and she went down there to this college that in Levelland, Texas,
Hmm.
that has a course in you can get a degree in bluegrass music.
Wow.
And they brought me down there to talk with their theater people, and in exchange, I got together with a band and we kind of recorded our rehearsal and then did a concert and stuff. So some of the recordings are from there.
Okay.
I think for a lot of people they might mean something, and so it's those two things, and then the third thing that kind of joins them is that when I did do the Zappa show and it didn't work out, and I felt like what do I want to do?
Yeah.
But I was aware that from doing Whiz Kids and stuff of this online world, and we got a computer in the house, and it just there was a lot of hopefulness at that time. We'll be able to have a better conversation as a species.
Right.
We'll be able to talk to each other with trust, and we won't be worried about whether color that person is or whether
Yeah.
they're overweight or any of that.
Right.
And of course, it's worked out just the opposite,
Right.
because it's about if we can get people watching and joining. So we'll give them the tools,
Right.
and they'll tell us all this stuff about themselves, and then the product is their eyeballs to these advertisers.
Of course.
And the way they best use the tools is to have get people to argue with each other. This gets us engaged,
And it's
so
about money. Yeah.
that's where we are. It's all money driven,
Very true.
and stuck. So there are people looking to say, how can we circle up and have better conversations with each other and stuff? And there's a lot of those efforts going on. But I found when I got into how can I get the stuff that's going on like the federal level with community policing and the labor department with their one-stop initiative and education, and then on state level, local level, and there were people because not everybody had the disposable income to get a computer. So there were people that were they were calling them community technology centers as a group because that way they could get a grant from the National Science Foundation.
Sure.
And because it had technology in it, and then the guy that ran the Apple Library of the Future, then he could match that grant. So there was thinking about how can we get money to support this effort going on to get access to. We didn't have them in our pockets yet,
Yeah.
And so I thought there was a way to get that done and to maybe even create a TV show that would be made out of, because I thought the best thing that we can use these tools for is to tell our stories. So if we had local access places, just the idea of a local access place, that could be, in Harlem or in malls or in the rural.
Yeah. I totally see what you
mean.
The
lap was the place that people, so in going to conferences and, just trying to develop that idea out there, I got into this idea of people circling up and let's run a lap. Let's go around the circle, and then let's just go around the circle again and keep going around the circle, and let's lap in. Let's share what's in our laps. All stuff around. Same like with a song comes, you get sort of one line that seems true or meaningful, and then where does that go?
Yeah.
And so I did learn that that really works when people just start sharing their stories and stuff. A whole lot of stuff.
Very powerful.
And so I'm looking to kind of bring those together in ways, and I'm working with some people that are looking to get people to circle up on a community level in groups of like 8 or so, and answer questions like, what do you love about America and what breaks your heart about America? And,
Hmm.
you know, and just have questions without it being left or right, or and
Right.
speaking
Just
from
get
the
the
heart,
conversation going.
and keep
Yeah.
that conversation going, leading to September 29th. We've got the date booked, you know, in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Monument, with people circling up. And it's all gotten down to kind of a letter that gets read to and from the American people about what do we really want, not this political back and forth that's
Right.
going on.
Right. Right.
And all of that is very high hopes, you know, pie in the sky sort of
It has to start
thinking.
somewhere.
It has to start somewhere, and there are a lot of other people doing circles and different. Some are coming from, you know, the other direction. The Koch brothers
Sure.
said, they said, you know what, we were wrong. The idea of putting a lot of money into people at the top, that
Right.
is, we don't like what's going on.
Right.
We're conservative, but we didn't bargain for this, you know.
Right.
And so they've got their way of doing it, and so anyway, you know, anybody that sees this and that is interested in you know, running a lap or lap in, or you know,
Hmm.
at one point after the Babe Ruth thing, and you know, before my daughter was got to the age where I couldn't be taking her around, I did a bunch of sort of evenings of poems and stories and songs with Max Gail in
Hmm.
a local in Wisconsin or wherever. You know, he said, let's get the people in there that play music in that town that couldn't fill the local theater, the
Right.
big theater in town, but they could certainly entertain it,
Hmm.
and they could be the opening acts,
Yeah.
and then maybe we could do some combos, and then all do a you know a thing together at the
Yeah.
end,
Yeah.
encore together, you know, and then in the daytime we could all circle up and share these different environmental or other not-for-profit groups in the community, and kind of put that whole vision together. And it actually worked out really well sometimes.
That's very cool.
And
I
so
love it.
just kind of put that out into the world for those who are seeing that we're not going to solve our problems just throwing crap
Fight.
back at each other, you
Right.
know, which is often misinformation, and sometimes it's true, because
Right.
in the zero sum game of politics, people will do this, you know. You can find people when the other party was in, they're saying the same thing back and forth to each
Right.
other about immigration, or, you know, so
Talk it out.
anyway, so that that's something I'd really like to put out. Anybody that's interested, you know, in having a further conversation with me about any of that. And then I'd love to close with at least one of my short rhymes. And
Sure.
I'll be ready to shut up, you know, but I've really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate the time you've taken. You know,
Wow, Max, give me a
uh,
break. I totally enjoy it. Yeah, go
well,
ahead.
if we weren't doing this in this way, I would have been asking you, well, what acting did you do and how'd you get started? I want to know all the same things about you.
I
But
appreciate that.
you
But
know,
so what's your rhyme? Let's hear it.
all right, it goes like this. It goes it. I usually call them like what by the first line
Oh
of the
my God.
song, you know,
Okay,
or the
wait. Okay,
poem
go ahead.
or the
Start it again.
rhyme, you know. So this one I call bigger. I call it bigger, but the first line is bigger than you. And I like to say that can be the capital Y you that people get hung up on, who's the you you're praying to, you know, or just the whole notion of you, you know. Sometimes we use it in a way we're talking, you know, what did it feel like when you were drowning? Well, you know, you think, you know, so you, Eunice, and the next line is bigger than me. So bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than all our hearts and minds can see, bigger than all we believe there to be, bigger than bondage, bigger than free, bigger than love, bigger than hate, bigger than destiny, bigger than fate, bigger than humble, bigger than great, bigger than race or religion or state, bigger than teacher or guru or sage, bigger than sex or youth or age, bigger than anger, resentment, or rage, bigger than anything said on a page or a stage, bigger than action, whatever we try, bigger than all we accept or deny, bigger than anyone, what, who, or why, bigger than bigger and bigger than I.
Wow. Wow. That is a lot to take in.
That
That
was fun to share that with you.
Oh, it's beautiful. To be honest with you, I'm amazed you can just riff that off the top of your head. That's amazing.
Well, the things, that come and show up, some kind of all at once like that, some they take a while to find their way,
Yeah.
but they are, like I say, my breadcrumbs in the cosmic forest. They are
Get
something.
it.
So they're in there,
Yep.
and I just have to sort of think about it, and then the next words come, and they help me to get to that place, because I can get hung up on all of those things.
Oh yeah. It's a gift though. It is. It's kind of like, I've seen some interviews with some pretty famous songwriters, and
Mhm.
a lot of them say that it literally just comes in,
Yeah,
and they put it
yeah,
down,
yeah,
So
yeah.
I kind of can see that.
Yeah, in the native world, they don't say I wrote this song. They say, I was given this song.
Yeah.
So and I think that I think we're all gifted.
Yep.
And the original notion of genius, my understanding of it is like everybody had their own genius, their own particular
Yeah.
thing that offered. We've turned it into something that's sort of quantifiable.
Right.
But again, part of the problems we're facing with our modern world because of the way we tend to think of what's real and what isn't.
Right. Right. Rather than just look at it, it's
Yeah.
all, yeah, yeah, it's true. By the way, I think we should end on I think we should end on Barney Miller. I think it's a
Okay.
good idea.
All right.
It's a good idea.
All right.
And it's just going to be a very open-ended question. What is your fondest memory of Barney Miller when you think of the show now?
Okay, I'm a divergent thinker. So when I get asked what's my favorite song or my fondest memory, all that happens is a cascade of all the
Jeez.
So that's what's going on for me right now.
Okay, cool.
Themes
We
and
can
Barney's office.
throw out multiple. I don't care.
I think the one that has been the most popular amongst people is the one with the hash brownies.
Yeah.
I mean, that certainly is that one. But yeah, no, I don't know. I'm thinking of.
Sure.
I'm running through them. I
It
love
doesn't
the ones
necessarily have to be an episode, by the way.
Yeah,
It could just
yeah.
be what happened, on the show or on the set or anything.
Yeah, I sure loved. I think I started to talk about Ron Glass. That time that the idea was he'd shown up on a crime scene and he got shot at because someone thought there's a black guy. He's a perp.
Right. Right.
He comes in at the beginning of the show. He's pissed off. And then he goes out, and so the rest of the show, while other things are happening, we're kind of going, anybody heard from Harris? Comes back in. We're late at night when we got to that part. And Ron comes back in, and Ron was not one in those days of the blaxploitation movies. And there was a lot of stuff. There were still the things that were most parts were drug dealers and prostitutes and stuff in pimps. And, but there was also this other dimension, but he didn't want to like wave those flags. He was very clear who he was and where he was living and all of that. But at the same time, anyway, but in this case, he came in and he said, I want to know, we started to do the lines and he stopped and he said, I want to know, what am I apologizing for?
Mm.
And there were kind of two reactions, somewhat generationally split, because Danny came more from that Brat Pack kind of thing that grew out of, with all the prejudice going into World War II, there's still a lot of people that interacted with each other. So I mean, if you see a YouTube thing of Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra joking with Sammy Davis Jr., it can be kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, sure.
What they're saying and stuff. But at that time, it was just the fact that they had him there and were friends with him.
Right.
And the things that happened to break those barriers. So there were people that for Danny it was like, well, because and everything, but there were those of us say, yeah, why should he apologize for being pissed off about something that's going on, But
Right.
we sat down at like 2 a.m. on golden time, double overtime for the crew and everything,
Wow.
and with Danny and all, and we talked it through until I got to that an understanding. And then Danny wrote the script out, and then we played the end of it, And it was that kind of caring about what we were doing there, and respect for not only what we were doing, but the people who were, we never, a lot of shows kind of like, oh, the flyover country, they're not paying any attention to this.
Right.
They don't. What are they?
Yeah.
Uh, and uh, and just that gestalt of the show, and what we did in that regard. That feeling for
It wasn't just a comedy sitcom. It was bigger than that.
no,
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I sure, and everybody on the set was part of the set.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? There was no one time they fired the gal because she had let something go by that the censors thought shouldn't. Danny said, "We are not gonna shoot another day until she's back on our set."
Wow.
So there was no lower the what do they call them? Aides that they had a name for, young people who were working like on the door and stuff
Production
like that.
assistants.
Yeah,
PAs.
and I see. Anyway, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Nobody got to be like to throw their weight around.
Wow.
We just didn't have that, and I love that about it. And I learned my lesson when I started to get on other sets and found that it wasn't that way,
No.
And sometimes if you tried to say something about it, you got like, this actor doesn't know his lane.
Exactly.
I got on the Whiz Kids. It was on Universal Studios, so they have a lot of big shows,
Yeah.
and then it's a big top brass. We were just we were a little side deal, and so people who worked at Universal in the crafts, they would love to get on a show that would get legs and beyond, and then they know they would be working every week.
Oh, of course.
So the guy that was the line producer, his way of making sure everybody is like each week he would fire somebody. So keep everybody, but this was like breaking the hearts of the kids on the show because they would have bonded with the craft services guy or somebody else, they go, they fired, So I went in and talked to the line producer. I said, I think this is really counterproductive,
Yeah.
I don't think that kids are having a hard time with it, and they've got their sort of ideals and all. And he was very placating and,
Sure.
he was clear bullshitting, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it was so clear that, what he really thought of what I had to say and whether it was going to change or not.
Right. Right.
That. So that I think, and I think that people picked up on that, and that's one of the reasons that it's. I mean, I think other sets had that too. I think probably, other sets had that going on, But eventually, portable video showed up, and the news stations had their portable video. They didn't have satellite, but and I started this thing, and I'd been pitching. When the ABC network executives, they would sometimes come over and watch us tape because we would tape into the evening.
Yeah.
They had the A-Team as their number one show, but we were their grown-up show.
Right.
And we were their Peabody Award winner, and stuff.
Yeah.
And they had a problem in that they couldn't find a way to get into Johnny Carson's audience at 11:30 when the there was the rules that they had to go back to the local TV stations from 11 to 11:30, and so I was pitching them. Well, what if you did something like Charles Kuralt's Sunday morning show, but more for the Saturday Night Live generation in a way, and think of it as like a docu-musical, where music is at the heart of it and stuff. And
were they responsive?
Well, they gave me some money to do that as a way to, it's my negotiations for that year, that they were kind of in a spot where they couldn't give me it just as salary because that meant they would have had to pay somebody else more and
Yeah.
stuff, And so they were, when they eventually saw what I had, it kind of freaked them out. I think they were thinking, John Denver had done a special on polar bears. I think they
Right,
said
right, right,
Wojo,
right, right.
Wojo looks
Yours
a
was
Hopi
much more
pottery or something.
intense.
It
Yeah.
was much more, but so anyway, as far as the whole trajectory of my time with Barney Miller and my growing
Yeah.
awareness of Native American issues and
Huge.
activism, and I was very inspired by the things that I saw in the music world with Bonnie Raitt and Jackson Browne and others that
Yeah.
were doing the no nuke stuff. And
Right.
it turned out there was a whole part of the no nuke things that was the uranium mining side of things
Hmm.
in places like the Navajo Res or South Dakota, where there was a terrible legacy of leaving tailings around, and
Oh, I'm
there
sure.
was a
I'm
lot of
sure.
negative impact of that, and so for me during those times, and also there was that musical connection with
Yeah.
Floyd
Yeah.
and stuff. So I'd get to back up Floyd and then do some of my own songs. And another wonderful comedian, Charlie Hill, a lot of people, because Charlie would do David Letterman, and
Hmm.
he did those shows. He never had his own show because they came at him to do an Indian show, but they were just so misguided in their understanding of that world and what was
Oh,
going
I'm
on.
sure that very limited. Yeah.
A lot of that has shifted now because back in the day there were Indian people who were doing Indian theater and writing and stuff, and now there's a
Right.
whole bunch of really talented Indian people that are
Yeah.
have successful movies and stuff. But so, but those were certainly parallel things for me. A lot of my talking about back to I could have gone and really learned karate and all of that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I found myself as I spent time with Native American people on sometimes powwow, sometimes
Yeah.
concerts, ceremony, but there were a lot of Native American vets because they had the highest percentage as a cultural group.
Hmm.
As Native Americans joined the military,
Interesting.
and I came to be with a lot of people who knew full well the bad record of our nation with their own
Yeah.
people. At the same time, it was their land, and
Right. So they're still fighting for it.
so
Yeah.
they didn't have that bitterness or that craziness or something,
Hmm.
but they had a heart
Yeah.
connection, and they say the same thing sometimes about Poles and Native American people. Oh, they think with their heart. They're not that sophisticated, but they think
Hmm.
heart first, And when I did Cuckoo's Nest in San Francisco, there was an occupation of Alcatraz. Interesting,
Oh,
it's come
very
back into
famous.
the news
Yeah.
lately, but at
Very
the time,
famous.
the government abandoned it because it was just had too many. I mean, the idea of retrofitting Alcatraz now is ridiculous.
Oh,
You know?
yeah.
But there was a treaty that said when the federal government abandoned lands, they'd go back to the original owners. So a group that called themselves Indians of all tribes, and they occupied it. They weren't able to make that stick. They eventually were turned off the power and everything. Finally, got them off. 2 years later, they had made it stick with Air Force base. They're a Navy base up near Sacramento in Davis,
Hmm.
California, and they did the same thing, went over the barbed wire, set up teepees and stuff, but they had their legal ducks lined up better. So there's still a Chicano Native American university there, Dakota Quetzalcoatl
Oh, how wild.
University,
I didn't know that.
So yeah, but that was, it was still on my periphery. I was, and then when I did Cuckoo's Nest in New York, Wounded Knee was going on. So I was aware of these things because I was playing the part of the chief, and I was, but with through Buffy, I met the people who were leaders of that,
Mhm.
and a guy who was Floyd Westerman, who was a singer songwriter, but he'd been to boarding school. A lot of those people, had been to boarding school.
Mhm.
They'd been cut off from their language, from there. 1977, we passed the Native American Freedom of Religion Act, which made it legal for Native Americans to do their ceremonies. You
Wow.
think about that,
That's
you
just
know.
crazy. You're talking 1977.
Yes,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So,
And you're in the thick of Barney Miller right here too.
well,
Like
it
when
was,
all this is
it was an
happening.
interesting time to be,
Yeah.
I mean, there was of course, the coming out of the days when the pigs were the pigs and all of that kind
Right.
of
Right.
stuff, for which there was a lot of, it's not like there was no evidence. There were definitely issues of, the police and dealing
Oh,
with
I'm sure.
protest and all of that.
Were you
But
at any point like, well, I have to be careful because I'm also on a network show or any of that? Did you have any concerns like the network
no,
saying, "Hey, what are you doing, Max?"
no, no,
Okay.
I never had, I had more concerns about what do I do with this?
I
I
see.
mean, I had interviews, and I had, I mean, they set up things. So like early on, they did a TV guide
Of all the characters
interview
kind of
with
thing.
me. Pardon me?
To introduce all the characters.
No, no, I mean, this one was specifically on Max, Gail, and
Oh, okay.
Wojo. We did have some things on the whole show, and I think they might have done one on Hal or something, but for some reason they did this one on me, and I had an interview with the guy, and I was sharing my sense. By then, but that was still before I had really connected with Buffy and
Yeah.
with all of that stuff, but I remember I did share some of my rhymes with him, and then but he wrote an article. He wanted to do a kind of contrast, and the kinds of articles if somebody's in a TV show, there's this certain kind of article they're going to write about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
The and I mean, for a good while, there was, when I was involved with Native stuff, if I tried to bring an issue, it would still be the wonderful actor helping out the poor downtrodden Indians,
Oh,
but
I'm sure
in
they
a
would have
way,
done it. Yeah.
my life was getting saved and opened up by what I
Right.
was learning,
Right.
about the economic picture, something far more profound about how we deal with the resources we have and how we
Yeah.
share them than the kind of communist capitalist
Right.
duality that was,
I think the
just
network, to be honest, I actually give them kudos that at that time, here you are, you're getting involved in stuff that could be taken many different ways, and they're letting you kind of go there,
yeah,
you
well,
know,
to a point. But more, I was in terms of my concerns, I was more concerned about how do I share this, with
yeah,
how do I, what because there were ways where Native Americans were in conflict with the law, not like breaking the law because they robbed somebody or
yeah,
something.
right.
Um, and they had, I mean, most of the treaties were broken. Let's face it, we don't have a
No,
we
no.
don't have a good history. Isn't I mean, there was really a Holocaust here.
Yeah,
So
big time.
so
Did you bring it
but
into
I
the
did
show, by the way? Were you able to like
I
incorporate it all into anything?
I think that happened because of my involvement. That we did a show where Wojo helps this older Indian die in the park. Yeah, and then there was a great response to it.
Interesting.
I got involved with doing a show on Agent Orange. I mean, I got involved. I kind of co-produced a film on Agent
A
Orange,
documentary?
a documentary. Yeah, I mean, I say co-produced. It was a camera crew that I got connected with, all women camera crew actually, but from New York that came up when I was on a Mohawk reservation in upstate New York, and there was a big confrontation that had evolved between the Longhouse people and the state police, and I think being there and being able to talk to everybody and stuff helped
Hmm.
to diffuse that in some ways, But that group were working on a film called The Secret Agent,
Hmm.
so I was able to help them financially to complete it and narrate it. And it became a significant in terms of at that point where there was finally a settlement. made because something had to get the chemical companies to get off of just stonewalling,
Yeah, take responsibility.
And so I think that some of that activism that I got involved with, I did have a case of after I'd been involved for maybe 2 years or something. There were some people trying to push some legislation through called "Let's Be Good to the Indians Act," but it was really a way to undermine the whole reservation system. And so Buffy St. Marie and Dennis Banks, who at that time Dennis was the chairman of the Dakota Quetzalcoatl DQ University up there. Jerry Brown had refused to extradite him to South Dakota, where he was wanted. He eventually did go back and serve his time, but for a role he played in a confrontation at the courthouse, that eventually led to the Wounded Knee occupation. But it was a case where somebody who had just clearly said he was going to do it and went out and killed an Indian guy,
right?
Because he was drunk and he was a racist and stuff, and he just got off with a hand slap. There's a lot of background that
I'm sure.
Just say that it was, and so they said they started a walk. They started at Alcatraz. Because one of the things about Alcatraz is where they took like the Hopi fathers who didn't want to let their kids be taken off to boarding schools going back in the day, and leaders from South Dakota, because they could tell people that they're on an island, in prison on an island out in the ocean, to break any sense of hope and all that,
Yeah.
And so they started with a ceremony at Alcatraz, motored over to Sacramento, had a big kind of public ceremony, and then a bunch of people started walking across the country. And eventually made it into Washington, and they were trying to draw attention to these bills, and so I was trying to help do that. So I was going to the local cities. In those days, there was no View. The networks hadn't realized that after the morning programs, there was a big audience for them there that they could make more money with. So the local cities had their own, and they were happy to have somebody from a
well-known show. Yeah.
And there was always great reception to what I was sharing. But when I got to New York, where I'd set up, did various interviews and stuff, and the PR people from ABC had canceled them all.
Yeah.
I said to this guy, why did you do that? Why, that's not right. He says, "Oh, Max, the Indians, they got Marlon Brando, it was just
oh, wow.
So patronizing. It was where I came to realize that, on a certain level, when I started to get a certain vocality, so,
hey, listen, Max, thanks for being on my show.
I've enjoyed it, blabbing about myself and my thoughts and sharing, helping them get them clear. That's where I've been.
Well, that's my goal.
My sweetheart, who's the one, that thing about everybody has their gifts, she's got that line. She's really quite an extraordinary person. And among the things that she's done a lot is she spent a lot of time in the ocean with dolphins.
Oh, I love them. And I'm a surfer, so
all right.
I get
okay.
It.
Yes. Yeah. So she's, and a while back, there was a time where she was in Hawaii for a good part of every year and stuff, and then wasn't. And then we had gotten together and we were back there at the bay where she was used to going, and went out, got a kayak and took it out there. And this old friend of hers take her, because she'll go out, she'll swim out. I like to swim out far, and then I'm ready to swim back in.
Yeah, me too. I get the EBGBs. So
yeah. She'll go out for an hour or more.
Wow.
And she said this dolphin. There were issues. There was the what do they call it? The bog there. Because the volcano had gone off. So
right.
And there were issues happening in the Gulf of Mexico. With the oil thing. Anyway, and she said, it was all not with words, but this dolphin, told her, "Boy, you guys are really fucked up."
Wow.
And he said, what has to happen is everybody has to tap into their own giftedness.
Hmm.
I mean, she got that message strong and clear. Well, you can find that in poems. It's not like
Sure,
it's
of course.
none of the real wisdom is new, you know.
Right, right.
But that was her source for it,
Well, you can talk about woo woo and and that's how some people are going to view that and all that. But I got to tell you, I'll actually end on a story with the dolphins for you. I was in
Great.
off New Zealand, off Christchurch.
Uh-huh.
These they take you out on a boat and they're like, hey, swim with the dolphins. Well, they take you out there.
Uh-huh.
They're not kidding. They find like a school of dolphins, a big school, like I'm talking like 200 dolphins. And they
Yeah.
say, okay, jump off the boat and get out and they'll be coming by. Well, I got to tell you, I got out there. It was my wife and myself, and we were with about 10 people. And they came and they were like 5 deep. I had on my snorkeling thing and they're
Uh-huh.
right there and they're 5 deep. They're on both sides of you and they're going by in this. Well, slowly everybody went back to the boat. Well, and my wife included. And I'm out there by myself because I was with these couple of dolphins and we were playing and they were
Uh-huh.
like right next to me
Uh-huh.
and they started doing circles and I started doing circles. I don't
Yeah.
get seasick. That's not my thing.
Uh-huh.
But I got seasick going around in a circle like crazy with them. Well, I
Uh-huh.
didn't feel well, and the boat was quite a ways away at this point. And I said to
Uh-huh.
the dolphin, I go, listen, buddy, I'm not doing too well. I got to try. I got to make it back. It was great to see you. Whatever.
You said
And,
that in your mind, right?
well, I did. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because
that's
I got the
yeah,
snorkel on.
yeah.
Well, I turn to head back to the boat and I'm swimming back, and that dolphin, I swear to you, stayed right next to me the entire way to make sure I was okay. I got to the ladder.
Uh-huh.
I looked at the dolphin and I said, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And the dolphin just stood there for a second, then went off.
Uh-huh.
And so I am personally a big believer in that because I
Yeah.
know that dolphin literally cared enough to help me get back to the
Yes. Yes.
boat, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very cool. So I did get some out of you. Good. That's a great story. Where did you start surfing?
I started surfing in California. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
like right off of let's see, where did I actually start? I guess it would have been like off like El Porto, the near LAX, kind of that area
Uh-huh.
there.
Uh-huh. All right.
And yeah, but I'm a big surfer. I love it. I'm nothing, I'm not this insane, I'm more of a longboarder, but I get
Uh-huh.
out there. To be quite honest with you, I went this morning.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right.
So yeah, so I
Yeah.
get out there as much as I can. I'm
Yeah.
not a big one on traveling as much anymore, but I
Uh-huh.
love just getting right out there, do it, come back. My whole day is different.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I never got to the surfing because my knees were so bad. I couldn't get up on the
Oh yeah,
board.
I
I've got new
remember
knees now,
the
but
football and all that. Yeah,
yeah. But we're up here in Ocean Beach, in
I
the
do know it.
Sunset District of San Francisco.
I know it. I lived up in North Beach for a while.
Uh-huh. All
So I
right.
know
So
I
you
definitely
you
I know where
you,
you are.
Chris's son Ian is in his 50s, but he's surfed this beach for 35 years.
Oh, that's a tough. That's a
He's also surfed, Mavericks and stuff. He
Oh
calls
God.
Malibu Lake
Wow.
Malibu. And so, yeah, he says there's a rating, paddle out rating of all the spots up and down the coast of California from
Oh
1 to
my
10.
gosh.
And Malibu is a 1, and this beach
Wow.
is a 10. It's a really, I don't go in the water here very often. It has to be really sunny because it's cold. I love walking the
It's
beach.
so
It's so,
cold up there.
so high energy, but there's so many currents going on and all that
Oh,
water coming in and out of the bay every day. And,
well,
it's a,
I'm not a fan. I know how cold it is up there, and I know how rough those currents are. I didn't do a lot of surfing while I lived there, but yeah,
So you're doing this show, and
yeah.
is this providing I don't know, income? Do you have sponsors, or what do
You
you?
know, I don't have a sponsor yet, and part of that is I haven't really done a tremendous amount of work getting one,
Uh-huh.
but because it's perfect actually for a sponsor, but no, it started out honestly just like many things do. It was just total passion. I love classic television, and I
Uh-huh.
I just did it from that, and it just started to kind of grow, and I still love it as much as the first day I started. So
Uh-huh.
I do make some money from it on the from the advertising on YouTube. That's how it works on YouTube,
Uh-huh.
but not that much. So
Uh-huh.
if we applied the amount of time that I put in and stuff to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
money, no, not
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
But honestly, that's, I'm not opposed to making money. Don't get me wrong,
Uh-huh.
but I love what I do. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
get
love
that.
doing this. It's just
I,
that
I
easy,
I
you
get
know?
that. I get that totally. I really enjoyed it. I've talked way longer than I thought I would, and I enjoyed it, and I hope it, it's meaningful, and and are you still wagging your tail for acting, or have you?
It's funny you would ask me that.
It's such a weird time in the business anyway.
Now, I was gonna say, look, Max, for me, where I kind of, I guess, made my mark a little bit was it turned out to be voiceover. That's when things really
Uh-huh.
clicked for me. And
Uh-huh.
but what happened is everything has gone non-union,
Yeah.
and as that has happened, I just lost interest. I started, I was the voice of Dell Computer for like almost 2 years,
Oh
and so
wow.
it was just a dream gig for if it's not a sitcom, get a national thing that goes for 2 years.
Yes.
So all good. But what happened is slowly it became more and more and more non-union to where now I'd say 85% of voiceover is non-union. And so,
Uh-huh.
now I quit when Ford Motor Company came to me and they're like, you know what? We'll pay you $3,000, but we're going to own your voice into perpetuity. And I was like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not really doing the acting much anymore. It just even and also, I have kids. For I related to what you said. I wanted that time with my kids too.
Yeah.
And so yes, the business has changed so much that honestly, I don't have much interest right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I did some documentaries narrated. So I
Uh-huh.
had people say, you should try this. And, but I didn't, I wasn't any good at it. But the fellow that I've met through a musician friend, actually, but I can't say his last name now, but it's an Italian name, but Joe was the voice for McDonald's for a long time.
Oh wow. I'm
So
telling
he's got a
you,
beautiful place in Sausalito.
things
He's got a great
are
recording studio with a beautiful grand piano in it. And,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
That's funny because when I lived up there, I went to a studio for a few auditions in Sausalito.
uh-huh,
So, yeah, and it's only so big. I'm sure it's on that little main drag. Yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah. Too funny.
So, all right. Well, I've
All
really
right.
enjoyed this. Thank you for inviting me, and let's however our paths may cross or our laps overlap or whatever.
Yeah,
I see we're kindred spirits and wanting to make the world a better place.
that is true.
Not by eliminating all the people we disagree with, but
Exactly. Exactly. Let's all just talk. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, very cool. No, I totally agree. And by the way, I mean, just off, I've been trying to get a hold of Hal, and I've sent him in a couple emails to that email he gave me. I just have had no response from him, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know if is he a tough buzzard to get a hold of or what?
Well, to some extent, I think he has his people, and I think he's not. What I would say is that when I talk to him next,
Okay.
which I'm not sure when it's going to be, but we already agreed that we're coming down there for Thanksgiving, and we can stay at his place. And if he's in town, he'll come over to my daughter and family and everybody for Thanksgiving dinner. If he goes back east to see his kids, we can stay there anyway.
That's
So
cool.
we have a really nice interaction going on. But I'll just tell him that I had a great time talking with you, and
I'd love it.
he'll probably be open. He's got his memories and he's got a great
Oh,
story. I mean, he's an interesting
I
cat. So
I'd love to talk to him too. No, he had a lot of stuff with the big bands and all that stuff.
yeah.
Okay, well, Max,
All right.
it's been a pleasure. We'll be in
All
touch.
right.
I'll let you know when I release this. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Take it easy. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Please don't forget to hit the subscription button and also hit the notification bell right after that so that you get notified whenever I have a new episode. And be sure to check out some of my other interviews. Henry Winkler, Jerry Mathers, Angela Cartwright, Shelley Fabre. It goes on and on. They're so great. Enjoy.